For 13 years, Britney Spears lived under a conservatorship that controlled every aspect of her life. Her father, her money, her body, none of it belonged to her. The world called it protection. But the assistant who worked inside that mansion saw something else. Something the cameras never showed. Something that wasn't about mental health at all. She saw surveillance that went beyond security. She saw rituals disguised as therapy. And she saw the exact moment Britney stopped being a person and became a product. A vessel. A prisoner in her own skin. This is her story. And if you listen carefully, you'll understand why Britney couldn't just leave. Because when you're that famous, that profitable, they don't let you go. They remake you. And what comes back isn't always you. The assistant was hired in 2009, just months after the conservatorship began. The job posting was vague: personal assistant to a high-profile client in Los Angeles. Discreet, loyal, no questions asked. The pay was extraordinary, almost too good. But after years of struggling in the entertainment industry, she needed it. The first day, she arrived at the mansion in Calabasas. The gates were 12 feet tall, black iron with golden accents. Security cameras lined every angle. She counted 7 before she even reached the front door. Inside, the house was pristine. White marble floors, crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the canyon. It looked like a palace, but it felt like a museum. Cold, sterile, empty. A woman in a black suit met her at the entrance. No smile, no warmth. Just a clipboard and a thick stack of papers. The non-disclosure agreement was 30 pages long. It covered everything: what she could say, what she could photograph, who she could speak to, even what she could think about in her own private journal. The penalties for breach were severe. Legal action, financial ruin, career blacklisting. She signed it anyway. She needed the job. And she told herself it was just Hollywood paranoia. Everyone in this town had secrets. But the moment she stepped into the main living area, she felt it. A heaviness in the air. Like walking into a hospital or a funeral home. The assistant was led upstairs to Britney's wing. The hallway was lined with gold-framed photos, magazine covers, award show moments, red carpet glamour. But in every picture, Britney's eyes looked distant, hollow, like she was looking through the camera, not at it. The assistant was introduced to the schedule. Britney's day was mapped out in 15-minute intervals. Wake-up time, medication time, meals, workouts, rehearsals, therapy sessions, phone calls, all monitored, all documented. There was no spontaneity, no freedom. Even bathroom breaks were noted. The assistant's job was simple. Follow Britney. Make sure she stayed on schedule. Report any deviations, any mood changes, any attempts to go off script. It sounded like caregiving, but it felt like surveillance. The first time the assistant saw Britney in person, she was sitting alone in the sunroom. Barefoot, wearing a pink tracksuit, staring out at the pool. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup. She looked fragile, childlike. When she turned around, her smile was automatic, rehearsed. Like a reflex she'd learned to survive. "Hey," Britney said softly. "You're new." The assistant nodded, introduced herself, tried to be warm. But Britney's gaze drifted past her, toward the doorway. Someone was always watching. Even when no one was in the room, there were cameras. Small, discreet, tucked into smoke detectors and air vents. The assistant noticed them everywhere. In the kitchen, the hallways, even Britney's bedroom. At first, she assumed it was standard celebrity security. But these cameras didn't just record. They were monitored in real time. She could tell because every time Britney moved to a different part of the house, someone would appear. A handler, a security guard, a member of the conservatorship team. It was as if they knew where she'd be before she got there. Like they were tracking her movements remotely. One afternoon, the assistant was organizing Britney's closet when she found something strange. A small black device tucked behind a row of handbags. It was about the size of a USB drive, with a tiny blinking red light. She didn't recognize it. It wasn't a phone charger or a recorder. It was something else. She asked one of the other staff members about it. The woman's face went pale. "Put it back," she whispered. "Don't touch anything you don't understand." That night, the assistant couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the device, about the cameras, about the way Britney moved through the house like a ghost in her own home. She started paying closer attention. And that's when she noticed the pills. Every morning, Britney was given a small paper cup with 4 different medications. The assistant didn't know what they were, but she saw the effects. Within 30 minutes, Britney's energy would flatten. Her speech would slow. Her eyes would glaze over. She'd become compliant, docile, easy to manage. The assistant asked one of the handlers what the medications were for. "Stability," he said. "She needs them to function." But Britney didn't look stable. She looked sedated. One day, Britney whispered to the assistant when no one else was around. "I don't need all these pills. They make me feel like I'm underwater." The assistant didn't know what to say. She wanted to help. But she was terrified of losing her job, of being sued, of becoming another person who got too close and paid the price. So she stayed quiet. And she hated herself for it. The therapy sessions were the strangest part. They happened twice a week in a locked room on the 2nd floor. The assistant wasn't allowed inside. But she could hear voices through the door. A man's voice, calm and authoritative. Britney's voice, softer, sometimes crying. Sometimes the sessions lasted an hour. Sometimes 3. When Britney came out, she looked drained. Her eyes red, her hands shaking. One time, the assistant saw bruises on Britney's wrists. Faint, but unmistakable. Like someone had grabbed her hard. She asked Britney what happened. Britney looked down, pulled her sleeves over her hands, and said nothing. The assistant wanted to report it. But to who? The conservatorship controlled everything. Her father, Jamie Spears, was in charge. And he had a team of lawyers, doctors, and handlers who backed every decision he made. There was no escape. No oversight. No one checking if the system was working, or if it was destroying her. Then came the rehearsals. Britney was preparing for a residency in Las Vegas. The Piece of Me show. It was supposed to be her comeback. Proof that she was stable, functioning, ready to work again. But behind the scenes, it was brutal. She rehearsed 6 hours a day, sometimes more. The choreography was intense. The costumes tight and uncomfortable. The lights blinding. And through it all, Britney smiled, danced, performed, like a machine. But the assistant could see the cracks. The way Britney's hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. The way she'd zone out mid-routine, staring at nothing. The way she'd whisper to herself in the dressing room, repeating the same phrase over and over. "I can do this. I can do this. I can do this." Like she was trying to convince herself. One night, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, Britney collapsed. Just dropped to the floor, gasping for air. The assistant rushed over, but the handlers were faster. They surrounded her, blocking the assistant's view. Within minutes, Britney was back on her feet, smiling, apologizing, saying she was fine. But she wasn't fine. She was breaking. And everyone could see it. Except the people who controlled her. Or maybe they did see it. And they just didn't care. The assistant started noticing other things too. Strange people coming and going at odd hours. Men in expensive suits who didn't introduce themselves. Women in all black who spoke in hushed tones. They'd meet in the downstairs office, the one with the soundproof door. The assistant was never allowed inside. But once, she walked past when the door was slightly open. She heard Britney Spears' voice, loud and firm. She's worth more working than resting. Push her harder. The door closed before she could hear more. But it was enough. This wasn't about Britney's health. It was about profit. She was a product. A brand. A cash machine. And as long as she kept performing, kept earning, they'd keep controlling her. The assistant began documenting what she saw. Not with a camera, that was too risky. But in a small notebook she kept hidden in her purse. Dates, times, incidents. The bruises. The medication schedule. The hours of rehearsals. The strange meetings. She didn't know what she'd do with the information. But she felt like someone had to keep a record. Someone had to witness what was happening. Because Britney couldn't. She was too trapped. Too scared. Too medicated to fight back. Then one day, Britney did something unexpected. During a break in rehearsals, she grabbed the assistant's arm and pulled her into a bathroom. She locked the door, turned on the faucet to mask the sound, and leaned in close. "I need you to listen," Britney whispered, her voice shaking. "They're listening. Always. But right now, the water, it confuses the microphones." The assistant's heart pounded. "What are you talking about?" Britney's eyes were wide, desperate. "They're not just watching me. They're inside my head. I don't know how. But I hear things. Voices. Instructions. Even when I'm alone. Even when I try to think for myself. It's like they program me. And I can't turn it off." The assistant didn't know what to say. She wanted to believe Britney was just stressed, overwhelmed, maybe suffering from the effects of too much medication. But there was something in Britney's voice. A clarity. A truth. "This isn't just about my dad," Britney continued. "He's not smart enough to do this alone. There are others. People I've never met. People who've been controlling me since I was a kid. They built me. And now they own me." The assistant felt a chill run down her spine. "Who are they?" Britney shook her head. "I don't know. But I see their symbols. In my costumes. In the stage designs. In the music videos. They are marking me. Claiming me. And every time I perform, I'm feeding something. Something dark." Before the assistant could respond, there was a knock on the door. The moment shattered. Britney's face went blank. She unlocked the door, smiled at the handler outside, and walked back to rehearsal like nothing happened. But the assistant couldn't forget. That night, she went home and searched online. She read about MKUltra, about Hollywood mind control theories, about symbols and rituals hidden in plain sight. She didn't want to believe it. It sounded insane. But the more she read, the more it made sense. The surveillance, the medication, the repetitive routines, the lack of autonomy. It wasn't just a conservatorship. It was programming. The assistant started looking closer at Britney's performances, the music videos, the stage shows, and she saw them. The symbols Britney mentioned. Butterflies, symbols of transformation, often associated with mind control. Cages and chains in the choreography. Broken mirrors. Dual personalities. It was all there, hidden in the aesthetics. Sold as art. But what if it was something more? What if Britney wasn't just a pop star? What if she was a prototype? A test case for how far they could push someone? How much control they could exert? How long they could keep someone performing, earning, obeying, before they broke completely? The assistant didn't know who they were. But she knew this: Britney wasn't crazy. She was a prisoner. And the conservatorship was just the legal face of something much darker. She decided to quit. She couldn't be part of it anymore. She couldn't watch Britney disappear while pretending everything was normal. But before she left, she made copies of her notes. She tucked them away in a safe place. And she told herself that one day, when the time was right, she'd tell the truth. She'd be a witness. Because Britney deserved that. She deserved someone who saw. Someone who remembered. Someone who refused to forget. Years later, when the Free Britney movement exploded, when the world finally started paying attention, the assistant watched from afar. She saw the court hearings. The testimonies. Britney's voice, finally heard, finally fighting back. And she felt something break inside her. Relief. Guilt. Grief. Because she'd seen it all. And she'd done nothing. She told herself she was protecting herself. Her career. Her safety. But deep down, she knew the truth. She'd been complicit. Just another person who looked the other way while Britney suffered. Now, the assistant speaks out. Not for fame. Not for attention. But because the story isn't over. Britney is free from the conservatorship. But the system that created it? The people who profited from it? The machine that chews up young stars and spits them out broken? That's still running. Still hunting. Still searching for the next Britney. And if no one talks about it, if no one exposes it, it will keep happening. Over and over. Until there's nothing left but empty smiles and hollow eyes. And a world that applauds the performance while ignoring the pain. So this is her testimony. Her warning. Her attempt at redemption. Because Britney survived. But barely. And there are others who didn't. Others who are still trapped. Still medicated. Still performing. Still waiting for someone to see them. To hear them. To set them free. This is for them. And for anyone who ever wondered what really happened behind those mansion gates. Behind the smiles. Behind the fame. This is the truth. And it's darker than anyone imagined.